Today's topic is very important to me. If you want, yeah. If you want, you don't have to. Today's topic is really important for me. And what we're going to talk about today is, does it really matter where we go to church? The reason we're talking about this today is that there are many people in our community that don't fully understand the difference between attending liturgy here at the Cathedral and going to another church. And for the sake of another church, I'm going to focus my attention today on the other church being not Orthodox. Okay, obviously, if we go to St. George or Holy Trinity because our cubano is having a birthday or something, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Orthodoxy is orthodoxy. But if we're switching churches because we don't like what the Papa has to say, you know, some people come and say, well, we want to do this, and the Papa says no, so we go to St. George and see what that Papa has to say, or we go to Holy Trinity, see what that priest has to say. In that case, that's not the right thing to do, right? The church is a family, and we should be living together as a family. So that's the distinction between our Orthodox church and this tradition. As priests, we call it church shopping. We go until we like what the priest has to tell us, and then we stay at that church for a while until we get mad at that priest, then we go to another church. We know the story. It happens in a city where there's so many churches. Kala. But the important part of our discussion today is Orthodox versus not Orthodox. Does it matter where we go to church? And the answer is absolutely it matters. It matters for two very important reasons. One, and probably the single most important reason, is that we can only receive communion in the Orthodox Church. And in the Gospel of John, our Lord says, "He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood abides in me and I in him." He's talking about Holy Communion. Then he says, "He who does not," are you ready for this? Is tough words. You ready? "Has no life in him." If we are not receiving Holy Communion, we are dead. We might think we're alive, but we're nothing more than zombies walking around the world thinking that we are alive, when in fact inside we're dead, if we do not receive Holy Communion. And the holy apostles thought that that was so important that in the ancient church, they said we should be receiving Holy Communion at least every Sunday. And there is a canon in the church that says if we miss 3 or more Sundays, we are temporarily cut off from Holy Communion. We are temporarily excommunicated because we didn't take seriously receiving Holy Communion. This is how important it is for us to receive Holy Communion. And when we go to a non-Orthodox church, a Lutheran church, a Baptist church, a Holiness church, we cannot receive communion. And if we can't receive communion, we're dead. And so the single most important reason why it matters where we go to church is because only here can we receive Holy Communion, inside the Orthodox Church. The other reason it's important is a little bit more complicated, but just as important. When we spend time outside the Orthodox Church, in a Baptist church, let's say, listening to the Baptist preacher, those teachings are different from our teachings. And little by little, they begin to influence the way we believe. And then we get confused. Well, I hear Father Athanasios and Father Samson saying this, but I hear Pastor Billy Bob saying this. and it begins to confuse us. In 2012, you've heard me say this before, I know Father Samson wrote it in the bulletin today, more than 43,000 denominations of Christianity are in the world. I'm going to say that number again. 43,000, 43,000. And that was in 2012. Who knows how many thousands more since then? And they all teach something different about Jesus Christ. And so when we spend time outside the church, we're going to be under the influence of those wrong teachings. And it can become a division for us, where we begin, and this has happened with some of our people, they begin to challenge the church. I think the church is wrong because so-and-so pastor told me this, and I think that answer sounds better. But we, as we talked about months and months ago, we have the Holy Spirit protecting the truth of the church. So it's very important that we don't, on a regular basis, go to another non-Orthodox church. I'm not going to say never, because there are some legitimate reasons to go. A good friend from our school days, maybe he's being honored or she's being honored at his church, and we want to go show our love for one of our best friends. On an occasion, that's fine. But as soon as we go, even at that once, we have to be very aware that what we're hearing is not orthodoxy. There's a big myth. At least they're teaching the Bible. If you've ever said the words, at least they're teaching the Bible, I want you to erase those words from your vocabulary. Because it doesn't do any good to teach the Holy Scriptures if they're teaching them incorrectly. We're not just talking about memorizing the words of the Scriptures, but we're talking about understanding how the words change our lives and how we respond to the meaning of the Scriptures. And so it can be very difficult. The third thing I want to say about going to a non-Orthodox church, we are not in good standing with Orthodoxy if we regularly attend a non-Orthodox church. We could not be a nuno, we cannot Stefanosi somebody for their wedding. If we are regularly attending a non-Orthodox church, we are no longer in good standing with the church. We can't participate in the parish council. We cannot participate in the leadership of the community. That's how seriously and this is a global rule now. This is not just a rule for Tarpon Springs. This is how seriously we take where we attend church. Because where we attend church is the people that we live with, and the people we live with are the ones who influence our lives. And so if we want to have the Orthodox Christian influence in our life, this is where we come to church. And as Father Samson taught last week, we're not just talking about the Divine Liturgy. We're talking about all those other services of the church is a way for us as Orthodox to live our faith. So if you get a phone call from a friend saying, Father Athanasios wouldn't let me be a nuno, the chances are it's because of one of these reasons. Because we have a lot of people in our community who over the years, for their own free will, have decided to begin going to other churches. We all know that not every Greek in Tarpon Springs is Greek Orthodox. And that's okay. We would never force anyone to live the Orthodox way of life. But now I hope you understand when you start hearing these things through the, they say telephone, tell a woman, tell a Greek, something like that. When you hear the rumor mill about why someone is being told they cannot be a cubaro, This is one of the reasons, because people find it that, and they say, well, what does it really matter? And now we know why it matters. So what happens if you're traveling and you don't know where the closest church is? What should you do? Anybody want to raise your hand and give a suggestion? What do you do if you're traveling and you don't know where the closest church is? Well, you can Google it. There's actually a website called assemblyofbishops.org, I think, and it's every Orthodox Christian bishop in America. The Russians, the Greeks, the Serbs, and you just put in your zip code and it will tell you the closest church where you are allowed to receive Holy Communion. And so it's the 21st century. So when we're traveling, the chances are there's a church close by for us. But if there isn't, we have many opportunities, including there's a camera right in the back where you can watch an Orthodox liturgy on the internet. And I'm going to be quite honest with you. Since we cannot receive Holy Communion in another church, and if we cannot come to church because we're traveling and the closest church is just a Baptist church, better to turn on the computer and watch an Orthodox liturgy and listen to the Orthodox prayers and listen to the Orthodox sermon than to go to another church where you're going to be under the influence of the incorrect teachings. This is one of the main reasons why we're committed to that camera in the back of the church. So when people are traveling, or if they're sick, I know we can wave to them right now because they're watching us. Because if they're sick and they cannot come to church, many of our elderly watch the liturgy every morning on their computer. But it's better to watch the liturgy than to go to one of the other churches where we're under the influence of the wrong teachings. Okay? I don't know how we're doing on time. Uh-oh, you forgot to stop me. 10:41. 10:41. We got a few minutes for questions. Any questions? Yes.
All right. My grandchildren go to a parochial school, Catholic parochial school, for in their parents' eyes, safety reasons. Classrooms are only 10 children per classroom. They feel like the learning is better, blah, blah, blah.
And they're right in all those points.
Yes. And they are Christian people who have worked very well with my grandson and stuff. But they do have to attend Mass. So, as part of their schooling, I don't know if it's once a week or whatever it is. So, should an Orthodox child going to a parochial school not attend Mass?
All right, that's a great question. If our children are in Christian schools that have a required attendance for various services, our children should attend those services because that's part of the school process. We don't want to become disobedient to every single thing around us. But I'm going to caution parents that what they are hearing every day is not orthodoxy. And I have had parents, for example, I have said, I've been in ministry now for almost 25 years, so don't try and guess where this was. But I had I said, you know what, I want to do a children's Bible study. And this one parent said to me, my child goes to XYZ Christian school. They get their Bible study there every day. That's good enough for me. And I said, don't be surprised when your child grows up not Orthodox. Because if we're going to hand over our teaching to the other churches, our children will become those other faiths. I'm not saying don't go to those schools. It's one of the reasons that in my dream we have Orthodox schools in Tampa Bay. So our children don't have to have that risk. Our children can grow up hearing and under the protection of the church. It's one of the reasons why they have schools for their own children. It's why we should have schools for our children. In the meantime, we don't. We did. Well, we have an Orthodox preschool, and that's it. Tampa used to, but they don't. So there is currently no Orthodox parochial school in the Tampa Bay area. It is my dream, be it known, before I die, I'm going to retire in 49 years and 51 weeks. I'm telling you, before I die, we're going to have K through 12 Orthodox education in the Tampa Bay area, because we owe it to our children to remain connected to the truth of the gospel, not just one thing or another. Any other question? We got another couple of minutes. Yes?
How about old calendar Orthodox?
All right, so there's the question about the old calendar churches. There is one old calendar church here in town, and we are not in communion with them, so we cannot go there and receive Holy Communion. Okay? So that's the old calendarist church. Is not the same thing as the Russian church, which is on the old calendar. So don't confuse the two, because, and maybe we'll have to have a topic about calendars one day too. Just because they're on the old calendar doesn't make us not in communion, because we are in communion with the Russian church, which uses the old calendar. But there's the old calendarists, and they are not in communion with the rest of the Orthodox world. And there's, I think, one church here in the Tampa Bay area. Last question. Absolutely. The question is, if our friends invite us to another church for a baptism or a weddings and things, of course we should go, because we're sharing our lives with them. We just always have to remember, and I think I've said this before, and it really is a beautiful thing for us to keep in our minds. Our Orthodox life is about being healthy. So just like we're not going to say you can't go to New York City because there's smog, obviously we have to take some precautions, and in the case of going to other churches, just so we know that we have to have our filters on our ears, and then that way we keep ourselves healthy.